the virus is much less likely to spread via the aerosol route, especially if you're at a minimum 6 feet apart and there isn't overcrowding, and especially if everyone's wearing a mask. Now let's talk more about masks. I want to show you this very impressive study that was published June 30th. Now in this study, they set up a dummy and created simulations of coughing, first without masks, and then with different types of masks, or face coverings if you will. They used tracers to visualize the cough in the cloud that forms as a result of the cough. It showed that the cough expelled the gas up to 12 feet in a span of 50 seconds. After that, they covered the dummy's face with different types of face coverings. So without a face covering, the average jet distance was 8 feet and the maximum was 12 feet. With a bandana made out of elastic t-shirt material, the average distance went down to about 3.5 feet. With a folded handkerchief that was made out of cotton, it was about 1 foot 3 inches. And with a stitched mask that was made out of quilted cotton, it was about 2.5 inches. And with a commercial mask, specifically a CVS cone face mask, it was 8 inches. And with this medical mask or surgical mask, you could assume it's going to be about 8 inches. Now, mind you, in this study, the tests assume that the mask is properly worn and not saturated with water or sweat, which can affect the distance of the jet propulsion. So these types of masks are good at helping to mitigate the spread of the virus to other people. Are they perfect at doing so? Absolutely not, but they do make a big difference.
Both breath and speech generate aerosols in these ways, but speech can generate about 10 times more aerosols than breathing alone. In a 2019 study in the journal Nature Scientific Reports, experts investigated how many of these tiny particles people let off in a normal conversation. They found that people expel between 1 and 50 aerosol particles per second as they speak, depending on how loud they speak. In the context of COVID-19, super emitters could potentially act as super spreaders, releasing thousands of infectious particles into the surrounding air in a matter of minutes. A 10-minute conversation with an infected asymptomatic super emitter talking at a normal volume thus would yield an invisible cloud of approximately 6,000 aerosol particles. At this point, however, we don't know how infectious that aerosolized cloud might be.
Dr. Rich Davis in Washington coughs, talks, sings, and sneezes into culture plates without a mask on and with a mask on indoors. He is using bacteria to demonstrate how much respiratory droplets can spread without a mask on. These pictures illustrate his findings. The bacteria colonies show where the droplets landed. As you can see, a mask blocks virtually all of them.
There was, I think, one little colony of bacteria that made it all the way out the full 6 feet.
What about social distancing? He did the demonstration again from 2 feet away, 4 feet away, and 6 feet away. A mask blocked nearly all droplets from each distance.
There was a droplet that ended up on the 2-foot plate, even when I was wearing a mask.
He says these cultures show bacteria and not viruses, but they give a clear visual of what surgical masks can do.
There's going to be a difference in what you put out there when you wear a mask versus when you don't wear a mask.
So going out right now is a calculated risk, like driving a car wearing a mask, and social distancing is like having an airbag and wearing a seatbelt. In a catastrophic event, you will be glad you had both. There's a possibility that there could be aerosolized particles in specific settings, like indoor settings where there are crowded conditions, where there's poor ventilation, and where people are spending prolonged periods of time. And so what we've seen is that there are some outbreaks that have been reported in these closed indoor settings with poor ventilation, which include what you had mentioned, the nightclubs, which have included choirs, fitness centers, where airborne transmission cannot be ruled out. In those outbreaks, there could also be the droplet transmission and fomite, the contaminated surface transmissions. What we are calling for is more systematic research to be done in these types of settings. So it's not just how and when transmission happens, it's the settings in which they happen. So we need a much better understanding of these particular settings and these outbreaks that are happening so that we can better understand how transmission is happening. In terms of everyday life, we recommend a comprehensive set of packages which include physical distancing, which does include hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette, which includes the use of fabric masks when you cannot do physical distancing, to ensure that when you have these closed settings that you have good ventilation. So it's a combination of packages. But the dominant route of transmission from all of the available evidence and our understanding and working with large groups of different disciplines collectively is droplet in contact, although there may be other modes of transmission which we don't rule out.